There are lots of unanswered questions in Genshin Impact, ranging from who is the unknown god to why does Alhaitham have a green gem on his chest. They're so intriguing that lore enthusiasts seek to come up with all kinds of answers to these questions because there's a little snail in their ear that won't stop bugging them until they've come up with something. Some other lore enjoyers, however, don't really know where to begin connecting the dots, so instead, they consume content of lore theorists who are able to make conjectures that sometimes turn out to be accurate, making them seem like fortune tellers. Except sometimes they will make a prediction about future lore that comes across as honestly stupid, and you feel like the whole idea is false from the get-go, but people can't stop pointing out how sus it is that two things look so much alike that it can't be a coincidence even if the theorist is reaching so hard. It's like they're trying to prove that the world is run by reptilians. But of course, there's nothing inherently wrong with making far-out theories, like there is some fun in that, but if it gets to the point where fans are unable to use their critical thinking skills and just accept everything they're told, no matter how erroneous everything sounds, that's where the problem with lore theories lies. And so today, allow me to be the devil's advocate who will attempt to grill all stupid Genshin lore theories like Samgyeopsal. But before that, if you find this kind of content interesting, why not go ahead and subscribe to my channel to catch more videos like this one. So now let's see what deranged conspiracy theories people have come up with, shall we? We as the traveler are privy to the info that Venti is Barbatos and Zhongli is Morax. Knowing this, we can't help but look at the respective statues of the Seven and notice that they look similar to them. Because of that, you even have fans insinuating that the citizens of Mondstadt and Liyue are dense for not realizing that Venti and Zhongli are archons in disguise because they look like their statues, which is fallacious considering it's not possible for every white guy with long brown hair in real life to be Jesus, right? Especially since Jesus is from West Asia, but I digress. Anyway, my point is we can see that Venti looks like the Animo Archon statue and he really is Barbatos. Same goes for Zhongli, showing that the resemblance to these statues has actual lore implications and is not just a coincidence. The same can also be said for siblings like Jean and Barbara, and Ayato and Ayaka. They look similar, and that's a visual indicator that they're related. So now, because of these existing patterns, you have fans that take it to an extreme and basically say that everything that looks alike has to be connected. Hence, people say that Guizhong is Sandrone, Alhaitham is King Deshret's reincarnation, Baizhu is Pantalone, General Menogias is Capitano, Razor and Sino are blood relatives, and whatever other insanely questionable theories people have. I mean, I will admit that I have thought that Kaya and Candice could be vaguely related, but I didn't try convincing people that it was true, and I left that idea behind because Kaya is implied to be Indian, and Candice is either from ancient Egypt, Nubia, or Kush. Some less intense version of this theory are not directly equating to individuals, but identifying certain design features being indicative of some hidden connection, like saying that Chongyun and Baizhu were Visha people because of their eyes. I mean, these supposed theories sound very unlikely when you first hear them because they're so wild, and there are hardly any indicators that these people are the same aside from their appearance. However, these people would argue that Genshin writers and designers don't include details without any bigger meaning because everything is connected in this game, the Illuminati is real, and your mother is a member. You get it. The thing is, yes, there could be hidden clues in design elements which contributed to some important findings like Scaramouche being a puppet, but just because one theory using this kind of logic is correct doesn't mean that it's decent proof for all other theories. Besides, the Scaramouche puppet theory was largely supported by the Pale Flame artifacts, so it's really not just about appearance. To demonstrate the shallowness and unreliability of appearance-based theories, let me give some counterexamples. For one, people might erroneously make the connection between Xiao's mask and Ito's mask because they both look fierce and have horns, but if you read up further, you'd find out that Xiao's mask seems to be a Nuo mask from Chinese culture meant for fighting evil spirits through dance. Fun fact, Shao actually says Dance of Evil conquering in the Asian dubs. So, obviously, it has no connections to Ito's mask and actually seems to have a rather opposite symbolism, like one is for combating demons and one is related to the Oni, who are like demons. Additionally, there's also Kaveh, who looks like a sibling of the two travelers, but it's literally impossible for that to happen since they're immortal beings and he's just some researcher's kid. Ultimately, a better explanation for two characters looking similar could just be that, they're from the same or a similar race. People from Kynria all have diamond eyes because they're essentially from the same race. And with the likes of Kaya, Candice, Jet, and Jebrael, you can likely just attribute that to similarities in features across South and West Asia and Northern Africa. They're not even from the same exact race, just adjacent ones. And for, let's say, Baizhu and Pantalone, they could literally just both be from Liyue, like it's not a big deal. Now, as for Chongyun's eyes, it could really just be that the designers wanted to give him cute eyes and they forgot to talk to the department of writers in charge of the Enkanomiya storyline. Like, come on, just try looking for more textual evidence rather than going on a manhunt for loosely connected lore just to try to make a point that you're struggling to admit is false. Anyway, I mentioned that Alhaitham was rumored to be the reincarnation of King Deshret, only for him to turn out to be this very average, regular, common dude who wants a stable life. I think the desire to find a connection between these two isn't just because of the Lord of the Sand's eye looking like Haitham's, but it comes from him initially appearing to be very mysterious, as if he had more relevance to the story than it seemed. Which, by the way, side note, each character is relevant for world building, even if they don't contribute to the main plot. Please understand this, oh my god. Going back, it seems like people really did want him to be very important to the point of being godly, which is why they came up with many ideas about his real identity. And that's not only evident with Haitham, it's also seen in how people think Niguang is a reincarnation of Guizhong, Kaveh is a reincarnation of Nabu Malikata, or that Baizhu was the real Dendro Archon. It's like people can't accept that they're just really talented mortals and want to make them seem divine, not realizing that the connection is far-fetched and that these theories are also erasing these characters' sense of individuality. I just want to point out that in real beliefs of reincarnation, it's said to occur somewhat randomly, like it takes karma into account, but you're not necessarily born in the same place as your previous life, and you're meant to forget who you were before. But in fiction, it does have a purpose, and by saying someone is a reincarnation, you're essentially saying that they have a destiny which is dictated by their previous life. And while that's cool for a show like Avatar: The Last Airbender, it contradicts the point of Genshin, which is that humans are capable of great feats on their own. Besides, even if human souls can reincarnate in Genshin, we don't know if dead gods can do the same. So yeah, be mindful of the negative implications of reincarnation theories. Of course, this behavior of lore theorists trying to make certain characters seem more glorious than they are isn't restricted to reincarnation theories. It can also manifest in arguing that a character is a divine being in disguise or will play a major role in the future. Like some want Diluc to be the son of a Hexen Circle member, and some even want Kaya to be Kynria's next king or something, which is not impossible per se, but it neglects the fact that Genshin storylines emphasize collective action rather than individual heroism, so your favorite character will likely not be the person to save or destroy an entire nation on their own. So yeah, just know that your faves are amazing people without you having to make stuff up just for them to have secret glorious origins or whatever. On top of what I've previously mentioned, I'd say Genshin lore theorists are just very fond of shock factor. If there is a more reasonable or tame explanation for something, expect a lot of them to just kick it to the side like the way Signora did to Venti. It's because some of these theories seem to be based on the assumption that the writers will pull a plot twist. I wouldn't put it past Hoyoverse, I mean they do that a lot in world quests, but sometimes these plot twist lore theories deliberately ignore information we've been given and propose some other idea with the purpose of making it seem like we've been told a lie until now. there must be varying degrees of likelihood when it comes to each plot twist lore theory. Like, they're not all incredibly impossible, but lots of them feel far-fetched. Some examples would be insinuating that certain characters are not actually dead, or someone is actually working for the enemy, or someone is hiding their true identity, which doesn't even logically seem possible, like the examples I mentioned previously. While it is very likely that lots of people in Tevat have been lying to us, the misinformation may not be to an extreme degree, and I think it's more likely that certain world-building facts are subject to revelations in the future. But it's probably not the same for plot points. For instance, it might be possible that there has been lots of misinformation about how the cataclysm started, but let's say with something like Signora's death, that's unlikely to be reversed because it already happened. And let's say she's gonna be revived, then it'll become less likely for other characters to be revived alongside her, because that's just cheapening death at this point. Admittedly, however, I'm kinda biased against betrayal theories because I get easily attached to certain characters and I don't want to believe that they'll turn against us, so maybe that's why I don't like plot twist lore theories. But still, it's important to consider if the betrayal has been hinted at already or if the character seems predisposed to betrayal, because sometimes it's weird when theorists have to change an entire character's personality or miss the point of their characterization just for the sake of preaching that some plot twist will happen. Those things aside, I think the greatest reason why lore theorists do make outlandish claims is because the unknown things about Genshin are kinda intimidating. There's just so much that hasn't been revealed yet, and whatever gets revealed at this point still raises too many questions, sometimes even more than it answers. So I think when theorists try to find connections between things, it's done out of an attempt to make sense of everything and to overcome the ominousness of the unknown, although they often do this by making even more ominous conjectures. But anyway, this behavior is evident in how they try to decipher the identity of an unknown character by connecting them to someone we already know, because I guess it makes them feel better than acknowledging that the character in question is just an entirely different figure that we haven't encountered yet. For example, I'm not sure if this was an actual theory that was going around, but I did see a thumbnail of a video suggesting that Piero could be Dine's life. And a less weird but still far out idea is that Piero is Kaya's father. Both of these theories, with the first one being debunked, I think stem from people wanting to make sense of Kyria with the available Kyrian characters, since it's very difficult to imagine who else could still be out there. And of course, we can't get rid of the theory that Paimon is either the unknown god or Ishtaroth. I haven't heard the so-called proof of these theories, but I think people are just too impatient and eager to get to know the unknown god or Ishtaroth immediately that they want them to carry a known identity already, compared to imagining that they're just someone we haven't met yet. People want some sort of anchor, and I understand their need for that, but some lore theorists go overboard with trying to find this thing that will make them feel comfortable with the unknown, that it ends up making them frankly delusional. These overly outlandish theories will only help in the meantime until they will eventually get debunked. Of course, theorizing is fun, but there should be some room for accepting alternatives, and we should also try to support lore theories which seem more sensible, more likely, and have better implications on character development. So the first criterion I would like to discuss for evaluating the sensibility of a theory is its plausibility. Basically, how easy it is for something to happen considering all logistical and world-building limitations. For example, between Kaya being a Hilichurl turned human and Kaya being a half-blood Kyrian, it's definitely easier for the latter to happen since all that needs to be done is for his parents to, get together. No weird rule-breaking powers required. Another example that I think better illustrates this point is actually not from Genshin but from Honkai Star Rail, which I don't play but I've heard about. Basically, there's this character called Sampo who is theorized to be affiliated with the Path of Elation led by the Eon Aha. Out of this, let me create 3 sample theories. One is that Sampo is a follower of Aha, second is that he's an emanator of Aha, and third is that he is Aha in human form. Well, nobody really believes that's true, but just to illustrate the point. So, out of these three possibilities, the first one is definitely the most likely since it doesn't take much superhuman effort to simply become a follower of a certain path. That's another thing I mean by plausibility, like the more generic version of a certain theory is also the most likely. So if you're a lore theorist, try to advertise the more broad strokes version of your theory rather than the specific details. In my case, I like to theorize about Kaya being a half-blood. I've done essentially 2 videos on it, and I always emphasize that Kaya being a half-blood is very likely in and of itself, even if my more specific conjectures about who his parents are might be false. Don't expect people to buy into literally every aspect of your theory, even if some parts of it seem outlandish and lack basis. Disclaimers about certain connections are also much needed to avoid spreading misinformation. Another thing to consider about lore theories is the personality of the characters involved, especially when you're saying that one character is the same as another. If the personalities don't align, it's likely that they're not the same person. I mean, I guess there are some exceptions to this, like Signora before the Cataclysm is far different from how she is now, and same with Scaramouche before and after joining the Fatui. But for characters with visions at this very moment, their ambitions feel more set in stone because they've already dedicated their lives to these values, so it's much less likely for them to flip the switch and become someone else. For instance, going back to Baizhu and Pantalone, Baizhu is well known for his kindness and accommodating attitude towards his patients, even delivering healthcare at low costs, which is something that I don't think we can expect Pantalone to do. Yes, I do know that Baizhu is quote-unquote sus, but it was revealed that his sus behavior is more just a byproduct of his noble goal to attain immortality so that he won't have to pass on the burden of his contract with Changsheng to someone else since it can worsen your physical health. He is morally ambiguous in a sense for attempting to defy the rules of the world, but he's way too principled and kind to do 180, become evil, and work alongside and even sponsor someone who conducts brutal experiments on humans. As for someone like Alhaitham being King Deshret, there's also a huge mismatch considering Alhaitham's interest in the pursuit of a simple life and his respect for the boundaries of knowledge, while King Deshret likely gets the crown for most unhinged mad scientist in Tevat. You know, like he even ended up accessing forbidden knowledge. Sorry, Dottore, he was more talented, deranged, but also somehow much kinder than you were. Just facts. Anyway, Alhaitham and King Deshret are two not just entirely different but also somewhat opposite characters, which is a sign that they're most likely not the same person. So yes, I would encourage you guys to consider a character's personality before theorizing about them because I think character alignment is a good litmus test for how sensible the theory sounds. If the two characters seem far too different in terms of how they think and act, I'm sorry, but I think it's really worth abandoning your theory for the common good. Lastly, another point I would like you to consider in your evaluation of a Genshin lore theory is, oddly enough, cultural sensitivity. I know it seems a bit strange to think about because are there any lore theories which aren't culturally sensitive? Well, the answer is yes. Definitely yes. Like, you probably noticed that the Alhaitham King Deshret theory is probably my favorite to dunk on, and that's because it also does seem kinda off-putting, culturally speaking, I believe. Because although he and King Deshret are both from Sumeru, King Deshret is the ruler of the desert whose people have been historically oppressed by those from the rainforest by restricting their access to good opportunities in education and jobs. So by having the icon of the desert reincarnate into someone whose race has been giving desert people a hard time is just like, okay, maybe you can argue that Alhaitham has roots in the desert, but he still doesn't feel closely affiliated with it as compared to Sino, Candice, and Dia. It's as if people want Alhaitham to have the glory of being King Deshret's reincarnation, but they don't want him to be personally burdened with the problems of the desert or be burdened with living as a desert dweller. Another culturally questionable theory I heard about is Kaya being a hilichurl turned human, and there was even this one person on Twitter who suggested that his skin was tanned because of an abyssal curse. Like, is this person hearing themselves? Well, granted it wasn't a widespread theory, but I still can't shake the feeling that lots of people are being weird about Kaya's skin in varying degrees, prioritizing shock factor over just allowing him to represent people of color, by being born as a person of color. And sometimes it's not just the theory itself which has questionable cultural implications, but also the process of coming up with the theory might be culturally insensitive sometimes, like when people try to get proof that doesn't align with a certain character's culture. It's not that easy to detect, but sometimes it does happen. Let's say a character is Arab, and you draw similarities between them and Greek mythology. Like, that's a bit misleading. It's also worth noting that certain terms are not translated properly from Chinese to English, like let's say with Alhaitham in English, his constellation is Vultur Volans, which invokes the image of a vulture, but Alhaitham, the Arabic name, means falcon, and all the Asian dubs list his constellation as falcon. So if you do spot someone trying to make connections based on him supposedly being a vulture, just know that there was a lack of research done on his cultural elements. All in all, just be mindful of whether a theory indirectly invokes racism or cultural inaccuracies. Even though Genshin is very much flawed at depicting cultures it's not familiar with, it's not completely horrible as well. So do beware of lore theories that have horrendous cultural implications. With all that said, I think lore theorizing in itself is harmless, but just make sure to also trust your senses if you do find yourself disagreeing with a popular lore theory if it seems too outlandish. At the end of the day, I hope we can find ways to theorize in such a way that highlights what's good about certain characters rather than create troubling implications about them in the process. And it's also important to be humble enough to recognize that your own theories can be flawed and might not fully come true. Just because a theory seems to have lots of connections doesn't mean that all of its pieces of proof are valid or reasonable, so be careful to not adopt a conspiracy attitude to these things even though it's just fictional. Anyway, that's it for today. I hope you found this video somewhat relatable. If you have encountered lots of stupid lore theories yourself, you can share your thoughts about these in the comments, or you can reach out to me personally on Twitter where I'm much more active. If you enjoyed this take and are interested in other analysis content like this, please do consider subscribing to my channel so you can express your support and stay tuned for future videos as well. And I'll see you next time.